Welcome to The Interviewers, a podcast for experts and influencers with advice and tips for getting booked on podcasts. This show is brought to you by GuestExpertsOnAir.com. Here's your host, Joseph Schinwald.
Welcome to today's episode for guest experts who want to jazz up their marketing with podcast appearances. Our guest today is David Stone, and our topic for the show is how to finally drop the worries about public speaking. Hello, David. Such an honor to have you on my show.
Hello, Joseph, and thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate this because I love spreading this message to people to show them that they can let go of all those anxieties that they have.
Thank you. I was very impressed, when I listened to one of your podcast interviews, and that's why we are actually talking together. So I want to talk a little bit about your biography, David. Mm-hmm. So David is a business success coach. He helps CEOs, key executives, and professionals just like you to achieve the direction, momentum, and success you're looking for. I want to chat with David Stone a little bit more, not so official, not from his role as business success coach, but from his role as the founder from iFearless.com. iFearless.com, a website which David co-founded with Gail Hulnick. David is the public face of iFearless. He is a life coach and transformational speaker and leader dedicated to helping people overcome the anxieties, worries, and self-doubt that keep us all from achieving our highest potential. In 2009, in spite of a highly successful international marketing career, he worried himself into homelessness. So this is just amazing, and I want to know more about this, David. So my first question is, tell us a little about your life. You had a six-figure income, and yet you were homeless, living in a car for a month.
That's exactly right. And it was as surprising to me as it was to anybody that hears about it now. Well, basically, I'm a Canadian. I was born in the Toronto area. And I started life, originally studied to become an architect and was practicing as an architect for a number of years. But then I found that my passion laid elsewhere, and I transitioned and I became a marketing consultant, but to architects and engineers and working all over the world. And very, very successful. But the interesting thing is, having grown up, I grew up in a family that while we were not technically poor, the income to children ratio was pretty low. And so I remember very, very clearly as a child watching my parents every month. They'd sit around the kitchen table and have this terribly worried look on their face. How are we going to pay these bills? How are we going to manage? How are we going to make the mortgage payment? And so I acquired this belief that anybody who, if you were to be successful and abundant and prosperous, the only people that could achieve that were either lucky or crooked somehow. They were either thieves or they were lucky, because normal people, it just doesn't happen for you. That was the belief that I came to have, and that informed my life for many, many years as an adult. And I had a successful career. And as you said, I was making very good money. But in my head, I was not successful. I was, always concerned, always worried. Okay, well, this month was fine. But what about next month? Surely something's going to happen that's bad. And so I was always on the edge, always concerned about money. And one of the things, and I've since learned, is that we understand the law of attraction, and we understand how our thoughts become our reality. And so this thing became a self-fulfilling prophecy for me. This constant worry about money. My worst fear was that I wouldn't have enough money. And then my worst fear came true. And it didn't matter. And it never matters how much you make. You will sabotage yourself eventually, if that's your belief. And all you need to do is spend more than you're bringing in, and eventually it runs out. And so that's what happened to me. And in 2009, as you say, and it was almost comical at times, because here I was flying around the country, flying around the world, visiting clients and having them saying, David, what should we do? And I would give them advice, and then I would go back and sleep in my car. And I felt quite fraudulent, of course, and all the rest of it. And then I got, but it made me angry. I remember very specifically one morning waking up and with my leg wrapped around the gear shift, and saying, that's it. Okay, surely, this is stupid. I'm an intelligent fellow. I've got 2 university degrees. I advise people, surely this must be somebody's fault. Whose fault is this? And so I started looking for whose fault it was. Maybe it's the government's fault. Maybe it's the economy's fault. Maybe it's my client's fault, surely. But the more I looked and the more I examined, the more I realized that for all the things that had happened that led up to this, there had been one and only one person present for every decision, every event, and that was me. And so it slowly dawned on me that, oh, maybe, just maybe, it's me, and not, and trying to blame others was kind of pointless. And I also had the realization that if I were to blame somebody else, if in fact it was the government's fault, or if in fact it was somebody else's fault, then that left me completely powerless to do anything about it. Because until the government or my boss or whoever else it was fault, until they decided and said, okay, because David is suffering, we'll change what we're doing, I was completely powerless. But as soon as I said, okay, what if it is me? Suddenly I had all the power to change and to make things different. And that changed everything. When I decided to take 100% responsibility for everything that was going on in my life, regardless of whether it was, some other circumstance had caused it or not, that's when everything changed. Because, fast forward to today, we've been dealing now with COVID for a year. And, I didn't start it. I know that. But nonetheless, here I am having to stay in my home and, be restricted from travel and all the rest of it. And it would be very easy to be blaming and complaining and whining about, oh, my life is so terrible because these external events have happened. But if I do that, then I'm a victim and I'm powerless to change anything. But if instead I say, okay, well, these are the circumstances. Circumstances change, conditions change, but what am I going to do about it? Who do I want to show up as today? And I don't want to show up as this helpless victim who has to wait for somebody else to come along to save me. I'm going to look around, I'm going to see what are my circumstances, what are the conditions, what resources do I have available to me, what am I going to do about it? What action can I take? And that was the decision I made that morning. And I remember very clearly, it was August of 2009. I woke up and I said, that's it. I'm going to take charge of this. I'm going to assess my situation. I'm going to assess my resources. I'm going to assess what I know and what I don't know. And I'm going to stop saying I have all the answers and say, no, I don't have the answers. I'm going to go look for them. I'm going to look to people who have been here before, who have solved these problems. And I'm going to stop imagining that I have, that I know it all, and say, what if I know nothing and I want to find out? And that's when everything started to change. And I launched on a study of my mind and how it works. and how worry and anxiety work and how fear works and how it prevents me, and how those things become huge barriers to me achieving the things that I want to achieve. Now, you talked about public speaking. So many people these days, they want to be influencers, they want to be coaches, they want to be thought leaders, and yet they have this fear that prevents them from putting their message out there, from standing and opening their mouth in front of a large crowd of people. And that's a huge barrier. And as soon as we recognize, okay, that is between me, that's an obstacle that's between me today and where I want to be. And until I get rid of that barrier, I'm not going to be able to achieve the things that I've set for myself. So that's what I did. I said, that's it. I'm going to find a way to change my mindset, this mindset about money, this mindset about fear, this mindset that says the world is a place I should be afraid of. And that's when everything changed. And I can safely say now, today, that there is nothing whatsoever that I worry about. And it's not COVID, it's not money, it's not my health, it's not anything at all. That doesn't mean I don't have challenges. We all have challenges. The world is, the world puts obstacles in front of us, but I never, ever respond to those with worry and anxiety and fear. I look at them and I say, okay, interesting. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to attack this?
So I'm grateful you mentioned this about public speaking, because, I coach people who want to go on a podcast tour, and I book them in. But when I see how well they are prepared, what kind of experts they have such deep expertise, and they have a framework they can talk about, and they have a compelling story. Well, sometimes we have to polish a little bit the biography so it really fits for podcasting, and sometimes they have a lot of expertise and they need to just look at the pyramid and make some trade-offs so they come to the focus. But then there's a very important point, that is they worry themselves often also to not speaking. They worry and fear, anxiety probably is all really definitely interconnected, and that's a pity, because if they would be just have equanimity about it, and not worry what can happen on this podcast interview, what can happen, what can really happen, and that is the worry. They imagine something, they say something which is not right, which they will regret afterwards, or something stupid, and now it's public, But that is the thing. I was on television 50 times in my year. And I had also these kind of awkward moments. And I said something really stupid sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But, you have to do it. Exactly. Yeah. So let's go to our next question. I would really, and my audience would really be interested in how you would define worries. Because steps and the strategy, how to drop it, actually. And that's why we talk about this first. How would you define worries, and why is it so hard to make the conscious connection between worries and our lack of success?
That's a really good question. And that formed part of the study that I did, because I wanted to find out. Well, we all have, if we think about the concept of fear. Now, fear is a response to something we perceive as a threat. So let's say you're walking along the street and you want to cross the street, and you turn, you step out in the street and you look, and there's a bus coming, and it's coming fast and it's coming right at you. Our bodies and our physiology is designed to respond to anything that we perceive as a threat. And of course, it's, hundreds of thousands, millions of years old, because it was designed when we were walking around and the saber-toothed tiger jumped out of the bushes. We needed to learn how to get away from that. And so what happens is your brain, your senses, your eyes, whatever, perceive this threat. And let's say in the case of a bus, that's a real and present danger. What happens is your brain registers it, it sends signals to your body responds by pumping cortisol, which is one of the adrenaline-related hormones in your body, and it is the hormone that allows you to take quick action. It's the stress hormone, and what happens is your breathing rate picks up, your heart rate increases, your reflexes get faster, and you are now primed for action. And so you jump out of the way, you jump back onto the sidewalk, and your body has prepared you, and it has an increased level of strength to do that. So now you're back on the sidewalk, the bus goes by, whew, the danger has passed. And so then your body comes out of red alert mode, and the hormones dissipate, and your breathing rate goes back down, your heart rate, et cetera, and you're back to normal. And that is the fear reaction. And it's a very useful biological response. Now, but there are there are gradations, if you want, of threat. So the bus coming at you, or the tiger jumping out of the woods at you, that is a very real threat. I'm going to die right now, and we need to do something about that. But there are other threats that we perceive, and the threats that we perceive that are perhaps more vague or off in the distance somewhere. So, for example, I think about my finances in retirement. Do I have enough? Have I saved enough? Or I think about, there's a mole on my arm that wasn't there before. What, is that something? It's not, it's not about to kill you right in this minute, but our brain perceives it as a threat. This is something that might hurt you. Our body responds appropriately. It does what it's told. The body is an incredible thing, but it's not very smart. It can't perceive the difference between these two levels of threat. And so it goes into its red alert mode, but there's no action to be taken. What do I do right now in this instant about my thoughts of my finances in retirement, or about this, somebody didn't like my Facebook post, or I have to get up on the platform and deliver a speech. So our body responds in the same way, and yet it doesn't know there's no action specifically to be taken. We've got the fight or flight. Well, if you're you're going on stage in 5 minutes and you're feeling this fear reaction, who do you fight? Where do you run away to? And if you do run away, then your goals aren't met. And this is why our worries and anxieties get in the way of our berries. So worry and anxiety are subsets of fear, but they are responses to threats that we either imagine or that are perhaps somewhere far away that may or may not actually come true. And yet our body still responds in the same way. And we have that same fight or flight response. And so since there's no one to fight, we think, I can't do this. I have to run away. I can't get up on the stage and speak. And that's why it gets in the way. And if it's, I can't start this new business because I worry that I might not have enough money, or I can't ask that girl out for a date because I'm afraid she'll say no and I'll be embarrassed. So these are the kinds of threats that get in the way, or the perceived threats that get in our way of making the progress that we set for ourselves, living the dreams that we dream about. We actually have to get past these fears. And this is where I studied and learned how fear works, because the vast, vast majority of it is simply imagined. They're not actual threats. They're just imagined threats. And there's a great little thing where you take the word fear, F-E-A-R, and it becomes an acronym for fantasized events appearing real. So there's nothing that's really there to be afraid of. We just fantasized it, but our body is responding nonetheless.
That is really so fascinating, because, I remember even one thing I want to refer to before I go into what you just said now. You said in the beginning, when you were homeless, it is for a short time, in your car, while you earned so much money. You said, well, I earned so much money, but kind of unconsciously you found a way to spend it.
Yes.
Because you worried. And because you worried, you found a way, your mind unconsciously found a way to spend it. So you ended up homeless in your car. Now, again, you say something very, very similar again, that it's worries seem to me also like an illusion, something that is unreal. Yet, when I think about myself, when I worry, and everybody, I mean, not everybody, you don't, but I do sometimes still, So when I worry, I might just think myself into a reasoning that if I don't think about it now, let's say in 2 o'clock in the morning, then I will not be prepared. Whereas if I know also somehow unconsciously while I think that, while my mind is telling me this lie, this kind of illusion, I know also that as long as I think that way, I actually bring it all about.
That's a really good point. And it is an argument that a lot of people use. But I learned to make the distinction between worry and problem solving. Those are two very different activities. A lot of people will say to me, well, I worry because that's how I solve problems. Or if I didn't worry, things would go really bad. All this stuff would fly apart. Let's distinguish between worry and problem solving, because worry is a circular thinking. It doesn't make any progress forward. So you're lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're worrying about this thing. You are having the same thoughts repeated that you did last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we haven't made any progress. We keep going over, the terrible things that are going to happen. Oh, this might happen, that might happen. That's the focus of your fear. Problem solving is very, very different. Problem solving says, okay, I have this challenge that I'm facing. What are and I want to get past this challenge. Let's do an analysis. What are the things that I'm facing? What are the actual obstacles? What resources do I have? What strengths do I have? Where are my weaknesses? What are some potential solutions to this challenge? And then I'll try a solution. And if I have some success with that solution, I'll continue it. If I don't, I'll try a different solution. So worry is circular thinking that just keeps coming back to the same place again. Problem solving is linear thinking that allows me to make forward progress. And problem solving, and when we can distinguish between those two, that is one of the really major steps to break out of this worry cycle. It says, okay, what can I do about it right now? What action might I be able to take? And so a person who is lying in bed, and you're using the example of, I've got a broadcast coming up. I have to speak in front of a large group. Well, worry would, all that does is go around. I imagine myself saying something wrong or forgetting a major point that I wanted to make, or putting my foot in my mouth in some manner, and then having all these people laugh at me and point and criticize me. And then I'm back at the beginning. And now that's what I'm focused on. Problem solving would say, all right, I want to do this thing. What are the potential obstacles? Well, what if I forget something? Okay, how might I solve this problem of potentially forgetting an important point? Well, I can prepare myself. I can practice. I can make notes that I could refer to. I could have a dry run in front of some friends. There's all kinds of ways. And then my worry says, yes, but you still might forget something. In which case I'd say, okay, have you ever forgotten something before that you were trying to talk about? Yes. Did everybody point and laugh at you? No, they didn't. And in fact, they actually admired me for having the nerve to stand up when they were all nervous about doing that. And they complimented me on my ability to speak, and it made me feel good. And that's problem solving. So I've analyzed it and I say, what could go wrong? What might I do to prevent that from going wrong? What's the worst possible? What might be some consequences if it did go wrong? And that was the thing about being homeless for a month was, that was my worst possible, my worst nightmare was that I would run out of money. And having actually been in that situation now, I look at it and say, okay, I survived that. It wasn't pleasant. It's not something I'd wish on myself again or wish on anybody. But in the end, it was the second best thing that ever happened to me. My wife is the best thing that ever happened to me. But that situation was the second best thing that ever happened to me, because I realized, wow, even with all this horrible stuff happening, I survived and I grew as a result of it. And those are some of the things that's how we learn and grow. And when I'm facing a challenge, I think, okay, what might happen if this horrible thing goes on? The likelihood of the horrible thing happening is very low. But if it does, will I die? No. Will I be ruined? No, of course not. Might I learn a thing or two and grow? Yes. That's not such a bad outcome now, is it?
Yes, I like this distinction between worries and problem solving. I believe worries, and that's the dangerous part in it, I think, because it is kind of unconscious, random thinking mixed with emotions, not mixed with desired emotions. And that, we know that can actually really produce the manifestation afterwards, unfortunately. Now, if you think about problem solving, it's a kind of equanimity. You have a kind of equanimity with emotions. You are not more, but your intellect is freely functioning.
Yes.
And it's not clouded with emotions in that way, like worries. And then you can, that's what I noticed. And then you said something about the public speaking again, and I really appreciate that, because our audience is interested in this topic. And I think that additionally, because everything relates to this, our life, and life is public speaking if you're an expert. So, a lot of times what I experienced in my own life was that, public speaking, when you're afraid of public speaking, what happens actually, like in school, in my time, it was at school when I had to give some kind of presentation. I would judge myself before the others would judge me.
Yeah.
And that made me already so anxious and nervous and worried.
Yes.
Until I realized later in my life that, if I don't judge me, some people will always judge me.
Yeah.
But a few people, who cares? But I'm not going to judge me. I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to talk, right? Anyway, This is a wonderful conversation with you. I knew it because I was listening to one of your podcasts. So now I really would like to know, this is for everybody so important, because you do have steps. You do have a framework. You have a method to overcome worries and finally succeed again.
Yeah.
In whatever you do in your professional life or whatever you do. What are those steps, David?
Very good. There are 3 steps. And this is a system that I developed for myself. And I read literally hundreds of books. You can see behind me, I'm an avid reader. But books that taught me how my mind works and how worry and anxiety affect my mind and my life and all the rest of it, and ways around it. And so out of all that research and practice, I developed a system that has 3 steps. The first step is to actually prepare your mind by interrupting your normal thought patterns. You have to prepare your mind to be receptive to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I can stop worrying. Because for most of us, worry and anxiety, we say, no, that's just a part of life. That's a fact of life. Nothing I can do about that. And that's just sort of the mindset. So step 1 is where we say, maybe, just maybe, I can stop worrying. And so then we examine worry. I became a student of worry and anxiety. And I like to say that I was and when I work with, when I coach people or I work with students in jobs and such, I say, all right, we're going to be scientists in a laboratory. And we've got our white lab coats on, and here's a blob of anxiety sitting on our laboratory bench. And we're going to look at it under a microscope, and we're going to dissect it and find out what it's made of and how it works. And when, just to fast forward, when I did that, what I discovered is first and foremost, is that worry is a learned activity, a learned mental activity. We have been taught from the earliest age that we're supposed to worry, that the world is a scary place. You should be worried about it. You should be anxious about it. And when we look at the world around us, the vast majority of people do worry. And so when a challenge comes, we've been trained, it's been reinforced over and over again that, oh, what do you do when a challenge comes? Oh, I worry. Okay, so I'll worry. And we've done this so often, it became a mental habit. And as with any habit at all, it sinks below the level of conscious awareness. And so we're not even aware of our worrying. It just pops up. And because it happens so often, because so many other people do it, we think, oh, well, that's just natural. It's certainly normal meaning that so many people do it, but it's not natural. And normal does not mean necessary. And so this first step is to to prepare our mind to accept the idea that maybe, just maybe, I can stop worrying. I mean, just little facts. For example, when a baby is born, a newborn infant is born with two and only two fears. One is loud noises, and the second is falling. Everything after that, we have been taught and we have learned and we've been conditioned that you're supposed to worry about it. But it's been drilled into us so often and so long that we simply accept it and it drops below the level of consciousness. So this preparation, step one, we raise it up, bring it to a level of awareness so that I catch myself worrying. Oh, there I go again. I'm having a worry response to this challenge. All right. And so we start having that level of awareness. That's step one. And of course, there's more to it here, but we can't get into all of it here. But that's the essence of it. Step two is where we press the reset button, where we interrupt that pattern in our mind and we actually experience what it feels like to not worry, what it feels like to have no anxiety whatsoever. And we do this through a couple of exercises that I take my students through. And there is also a guided visualization that allows you to completely and utterly release worry and anxiety from your mind and from your body. And the way that works is, as you well know, the mind and the body are very connected. And when we have anxious thoughts or when we're worried, it shows up in the body, and it usually shows up as tension in some place. Different people, some people it shows up in their stomach and their intestines, and they have intestinal problems. Some people it shows up in their jaw or their head. For me, it was always my shoulders and my neck. It was always, really tight that way. And so we can feel this tension inside our body. And what I do is I take people through this guided visualization where you actually start taking control. You visualize this tension in your body as an actual object, a thing that's in there, like a steel rod. But then with our imagination, we start manipulating it. Instead of a steel rod that's this long, we make it this long, and then we make it really short, and then we make it round instead of long, and then we make it blue instead of black, and we start manipulating it. And this is an exercise where we are beginning to take control of the anxiety instead of it controlling us. And through this exercise, I prove to myself that I can, in fact, control my thoughts. Just as an aside, I think we're all far too tolerant of our mind just going wherever it feels like. Your mind is a tool, and it is one of many tools. Just like your hand is a tool. And imagine if you gave an instruction to your hand to reach over and pick up this pencil and hold it in my hand and write something or draw something. But my hand said, no, I don't feel like reaching for the pencil. I feel like slapping you in the face. And it did it. Well, we wouldn't tolerate that very long with our body. But with our mind, we say, I want to think about, a romantic evening with my significant other. And my mind says, no, I don't want to think about that. I want to think about finances and how things are not going well for you. And the mind just goes off. We're far too tolerant of our minds behaving however it feels like. And part of this exercise is to realize that, no, I can control my mind. I can get my thoughts under control and choose what I want to think about instead of it just being, there's a great term, it's called the monkey brain, which is very good because the monkey just goes wherever it wants. But no, we can get it under control. So this step 2 is where you actually experience, because through this guided visualization, we remove it. And at the end of that, and it only takes 15, 20 minutes. And at the end of that, you think, wow, I don't feel any anxiety. And we even ask you, okay, go ahead, worry about money, try. And you're in that moment, you're not able to at all because you've released it. And so then we move on to the third step, which is to lock in this new mindset. And because worry and anxiety are mental habits that we've had for so long, like any habit, you can get rid of the habit, but you can only get rid of it by replacing it with a different habit. And habits are useful. Positive habits are really wonderful. Like I come into the house at the end of the day and I drop my keys in the bowl by the door. I've solved that problem. Where are my keys? Well, they're in the bowl by the door. And I didn't even think about putting them there. But because I solved that problem and because it's been a habit, I don't have to think about that anymore. It's a very useful habit. Negative habits, though, get in our way, and we want to replace those. And so I want to learn how to replace this worry habit with different set of mental habits. And that's the third step in this process. And there are 3 new mental habits that we want to replace worry with. And they're very, very important. The first one is gratitude. And so what we do is develop a practice of being grateful for the amazing things that we have in our life. And so, fear is the opposite of gratitude. Gratitude says, wow, look at this. I have this wonderful place to live. I have all this health that I have. And so we teach you how to focus on the things that are going well in your life. When you're filled with worry and anxiety, that's all you can see. That seems to be the only thing that you can think about. And so now we slowly shift it and focus on the things that we do have that are going well. And that's the equanimity that you talked about. We start having more balance, and we put this one challenge into perspective and discover, oh, yeah, sure, it's a challenge, but it's not overwhelming and it's not huge and it's not ruining my life in any way. So gratitude is the first mental habit. The second mental habit that we develop is something that we call replace it with purpose. Now, let me explain that a little bit. I believe very strongly that every one of us was put here on earth for a reason, that each of us has a purpose, something that's in our soul that we need to do. And when we find that, it becomes a reason to get up in the morning. It becomes the reason that I put in that extra effort. It's the reason that I do all these things. And when I am filled with purpose, there is no room in my brain for anxiety. A worry or a challenge gets in my way, and I think, okay, but I've got this other thing that I have to do that's so important. I will find a way this wall has come in front of me. I will either go over it, under it, around it, through it, whatever it takes, because what's on the far side of the wall is so important to me. So that's the purpose thing. Back to gratitude for just a second. When your mind is full of gratitude, there is no room for anxiety. You cannot simultaneously hold thoughts of gratefulness and anxiety. It's impossible to hold those two thoughts simultaneously. So the more we fill our mind with gratitude, the less there's room for anxiety. The more we fill our mind with our purpose, the less room there's anxiety. And then the final new habit that we have is something I call instant action. So let's say it is 2:00 in the morning and I'm lying there and I'm worried about the speech I have to give tomorrow, or I'm worried about my finances, or I'm worried about my health. Well, stop trying to fall back to sleep, because now you're worrying about worrying. Now you're worrying about lack of sleep, and it just snowballs. So what I'm going to do, if I really can't sleep, I'm going to get up and say, forget it. I'm stopped trying to sleep. I'll sleep later. But now what I'm going to do is go out of my bedroom into my living room or my office or wherever, and I'm going to sit down and say, all right, what can I do right now in the next 5 or 10 minutes that will somehow address this challenge that I am worried about? So if my concern is about the speech that I'm going to give, all right, great. Make myself a few more notes. Practice it in front of the mirror 3 more times. And as you said, judge myself and say, yeah, that was actually pretty good. Or call up a friend and say, look, can I practice my speech in front of you? Or if my worry is about finances, right there, 2:00 in the morning, I can sit down at the table and make myself a budget for the next month or 2. Here's my money that's coming in. Here's my money that's going out. I'm going to make a budget. And having taken that action, one more time, I feel that I have now taken control of the worry instead of it controlling me. And that's the biggest switch, is who's in charge here. And now, by having taken action, I'm the one that's in charge here, not the worry. I am in charge. And so I will take an action. I'll put down a budget. If I'm worried about my health, I'll go online and I'll make an appointment with my healthcare provider or my doctor or whoever it might be. I can do that online at 2:00 in the morning. I can make an appointment, or I can look up some information and, I can go on Amazon and order something that will help me. And I've taken action and I feel better about that. And then just before I go back to bed, I'll say, all right, write down 3 more things that I can do in the next 24 to 48 hours that will take even more steps towards alleviating this problem that I think I'm facing. And now I feel great. I feel, all right, I've done something here. I've taken some action and I've put that worry aside. I've taken some action towards solving that. And now I go back to bed and I'll sleep like a baby because the worry is not in charge of me anymore. So those are the 3 steps. Step 1, prepare your mind to be open to the idea that I can stop worrying. Because up till now, it's a fact of life. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just everybody worries, so therefore I have to. No, that's not true. What if you could stop worrying? Well, let's dive into that a little bit. And through step 1, I prove to you that you can, in fact, stop. Step 2, we hit the reset button. We break those chains that worry holds over you through these exercises and this guided visualization, so you actually experience what it feels like to be completely and utterly worry-free, completely fearless. And step 3, we bring in those new habits and we replace the worry habit with these new mental habits that are going to guide you for the rest of your life and show you how to get over any challenge and past any challenge. So those are the 3 steps. It's really, really quite simple, and anybody can do it. Oh, one thing I do want to point out, Joseph, is that I recognize, and it's important to recognize, that there are people who suffer from genuine mental illness. And that is not what we're talking about here. There are cases, there are genuine mental illnesses that result in anxiety and result in depression. And I'm not beginning to suggest that, it takes 3 simple steps and you'll be fine. In the cases where people are suffering from genuine mental illness, then I'm so glad that we have the healthcare professionals and the medications and the therapies that are available. The people I'm talking about are people like yourself and me and all your listeners who say, you're intelligent people, you're ambitious people, you're self-aware people. And it's simply a matter of, I've developed this habit. How do I get past it?
Well, I'm so grateful for this explanation. It's a beautiful framework. And isn't it true, David, that everything always starts with awareness, with meditation? Because,
Yes.
Unless you become aware of your thoughts, of your emotions, and you can actually separate yourself from it, because you are the consciousness and not the thoughts and not the emotions. There's a separation there. Right. And you can actually do something about it. Like, you have a choice. And then this is not just a recognition, like an intellectual recognition. Then you have a step where you say, okay, you can fill this space, which is now empty in your mind, with gratefulness, with a purpose, right? And then that's not it either yet, because, we live in a body. This is a life of action. And you suggest also, I think what I saw is in the last step is that you actually come to problem solving, because now you have this equanimity, and now you can sit down and say, look, I'm doing now this, and I'm writing a budget, or I'm making an appointment with my doctor, right? And this is problem solving. So it's beautiful. I think, David, that we are running out of time. We cannot really run out of time. I don't know what time is. Some people say it's timelessness, but if you have like this hour, for a podcast, you have to always watch the clock. And I want you to finally mention actually your book and your website and all this. So we should have enough time for that. So first of all, you wrote a good, interesting book on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's called Unsubscribe from Anxiety. Opt out of the myth that worry is required and take charge of your own life now. And the link will be in the show notes. And then if you would like to mention your Facebook group and your website, particularly when people want to know more about this worry-less state and how to overcome worries, I'm sure it's a good way to go to your Facebook group or your website, correct? And if you mention the URL.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the website is called iFearless, and it's i-fearless.com. And you can go there and find all kinds of resources that can help you find their way through these 3 steps. We also, as you said, we have this free Facebook group called the Fearless Living and Growth Society. And it's exactly the same thing there. And we have all kinds of conversations and resources for people who say, I would like to do this. I would like to stop worrying. I recognize that fear and worry and anxiety and self-doubt are getting in the way of the things that I want to accomplish. So these are resources that we've set up for people to find ways out of it. I also encourage people, just get in touch with me directly. I respond to everybody that reaches out to me. So, on Facebook, you can DM me there. On the website, you can, there's contact information for me. I absolutely promise I get back to everybody that reaches out to me.
Yeah, I'm in the Facebook group, and we already since a week or so, since I listened to this interview with you, and I already did some commenting, and I find it super interesting because, I still struggle with this sometimes, and it's great to have support, and particularly, somebody who has thought a lot about it, like you. We cannot become experts of every field, and sometimes sometimes we know maybe a lot about something, but this is something where I trust you with this framework, and I really wanted to have you on a podcast, and I'm so happy that you have been on the podcast. So thank you, David, for having been on the show. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Joseph. I'm so thrilled that you invited me. As you can tell, I get excited about this, and I'm passionate about sharing this with people because I believe that fear and anxiety are the biggest obstacles to the huge numbers of people from achieving what it is that they want to achieve.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on this. I thank you also, guest experts, for listening in. The recap of the show with bullet points are in the show notes with all the links mentioned during the interview. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to have you here again for our next episode. Thank you and goodbye until we meet again.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Interviewers, brought to you by GuestExpertsOnAir.com.